Or things like our education system, where it's not just parents who benefit from having a quality education system. It's the society as a whole. So you've got to put that burden on society as a whole to pay for, provide for it. It's not a user fee at that point.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I agree that there should be some public education. We probably disagree on what level that, would be, but, you brought up education. One of the things I'd like to see in education is, where each child gets, say $1,000. I don't know how much, it's spent for each child, and then they get to choose any place in the state that they want to, and which includes public schools, private schools. It doesn't matter what school. You get, this is how much the school is going to get.
Voucher system.
Yeah. And I would love to see that.
And
we talked about this previously. He was a guest on my show,
Okay.
and we kind of dug into this a little bit because it's a difficult thing to wrap your head around.
So I would be interested in hearing your counter argument then when it comes to vouchers. So right now you have funding that is going to the traditional schools and the charter schools. Right. Those are the two different types of schools that are publicly funded. Yeah. Then you have other schools outside of that, like the private schools, the religious schools, that don't receive public dollars.
Right.
So if you were to instead switch over to a voucher system where you're taking all of those students who are in those, which is about 10% of the student population, is going to a non-public funded system. But if you were to put them into the denominator now of you have the school aid budget, now you're adding 10% more kids that it's being divided amongst. So now every school, the traditional schools and the charter schools, they see their per pupil allowance. I think it's in the 8,000s right now. Maybe I know it was recently raised. I could be wrong on the number, but it would go from like 8,800 down to 8,000 only. So they're seeing like a 10% cut. All those current schools receiving those public dollars see a 10% cut in their funding. How do you expect those schools to manage that hit?
But hold on. You have to acknowledge, and I'm sorry for stepping in here, but don't you have to acknowledge that discrepancy exists because the system as it's working now makes that happen? Like that reduction in per pupil spending by the influx of the additional pupils into the system is a direct result of the way the money's allocated right now. So the system created this problem, and if you undo it, it's now called a problem. It's a circumstance. No? And wouldn't some of the schools disappear over time? So then your pupil I don't know. Seems like it would balance itself out in a couple of years. I could be wrong.
I think, I could be misunderstanding with what you're saying, and I'm going to kind of address all.
Yeah.
So the discrepancy, you would still see that deduction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But you're opening up more schools, which would cause more competition. And
just to clarify, do you mean making more schools available, not necessarily breaking ground on a new school?
Right. Okay. So now my tax money can go to
So now Rachel
Catholic
can
Central
send her
something,
kids to, I don't know, I can send them to Kalamazoo.
Yeah. Yes.
But we already have competition in our education system. We have school of choice, so you can send your kid to any traditional school you want that has room for that student.
Yes.
And we have charter schools, which recently had their cap lifted. So there could be an unlimited number of charter schools that enter the competition or the education market. If you want to see more schools hit the market for that competition outcome, that already can occur. It's just they have to be charter schools, which is still preferable to more Catholic Centrals opening up and getting our tax dollars.
Well, all I'm saying is that by opening up these private schools to this public funding, you would it would make it easier for a child, say in downtown Detroit, to go to these private schools that have outperformed the public and charter schools, which is what the goal is, for the better education.
What distinguishes a private school from a public school?
They tend to be private. They can basically select who they
Okay.
They take
and what they're teaching, like their curriculum, they control a lot more of the actual education.
Right.
Whereas a charter school and traditional schools, they've got to abide by state standards and follow the state curriculum.
Right.
And why is that? Why is it that we have a state curriculum and standards that we put on our traditional schools and our charter schools? What is the benefit to us as the public?
My honest opinion, there is none as far as the state's concerned. But that, like I said,
Okay.
that's just my opinion.
So
you know.
but would you recognize that for somebody who does see a benefit to society to have certain standards and curriculum
Yes.
in our traditional schools, that is why me as a taxpayer, even if I didn't have children of my own, that's why I'm paying into that public education system, is for that outcome of those standards and that curriculum, and to now allow these other entities to come in that don't abide by those but still capture my tax dollars. Why am I as a taxpayer wanting to pay for that?
And I would say,
Because they have a better education system than what the public dollars spend on.
I have a wild question. If a private school wanted public dollars, could they become a charter school?
Oh, they do it all the time.
So the path
Here in
exists.
Livingston County,
so
yes.
the path for what you're talking about doing
Light of the World
exists.
here in Pinckney was a
And literally by doing so, they're saying, okay, we will opt in to the minimum standards set at the state level.
yes.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, they decided to,
Okay.
they wanted to capture the public
Just
dollars.
bringing it full
And
circle.
so those dollars have strings along with it, which is the standards and the curriculum.
I see.
And so there are private schools that, they are struggling financially, and so they decide, okay, to get that revenue.
And this is why mom can't get paid for
that-
homeschooling her kids.
But
I do
can
think
she?
there's credits.
All
Yeah.
right.
all
sorry.
I was going to say is, but I would cut off those strings so that these private schools can still say, these are the things that we're teaching. You go to Brighton High School, they can say, we're going to be abiding by the state, what the state sets, and say a Christian school says, we're going to do what this standard, and then you as a parent get to choose what standard you want to send your kids to.
But for those who are not parents, for those who are the general public who are paying the taxes that are going to these, why would they want to see their tax dollars go to schools that don't have the standards or curriculum placed on them as determined by us as a society through our
So someone like me who I don't have any kids.
Yeah.
So what value would I see in the system I just threw out? The fact that the next generation, my nieces and nephews, their parents get to choose. We want our kids to learn these values that the school is teaching, and these values better align with what their parents want them to learn. So in essence, that will give a better education to them, allowing for them to do better in the world.
But those are values that the public has decided should not be incorporated into the traditional schools?
It doesn't matter. I mean, because there's value, and honestly, there's values in every single opinion that's out there. So regardless of what I think, because my sister and I disagree on a whole heck of a lot, at least political-wise and religiously-wise. I have no problem with her sending her kids to any school she wants because she sees value there. Because, I have no problem with my brother sending his kids wherever he wants them to go. Because I want that diversity of ideas. I want that diversity of views. That's where the value is.
It would be interesting to see what would happen in such a situation where there were no minimum performance or minimum standards of education. You could literally have like some very culty things bubbling up. I'm just saying hypothetically.
Yeah, there's always going to be cults, but I get what you're saying, yeah.